Hi, I'm Kate Fidczuk-Sterry and I'm a Conservation Officer for Bumblebee Conservation Trust. Today I'm going to take you on a little trip around my garden and show you how I garden for bumblebees. A good way to add extra forage to your garden is just to leave weed species around. We didn't plant this spear thistle, but it popped up anyway, and when it flowers it will have amazing huge purple globes that the bumblebees will just flock to. I also think it looks incredible here. A plant that divides gardeners is ground ivy. Many people say that weeds are just plants in the wrong places, and this plant likes to get absolutely everywhere. I really like it, and it's currently taken over our lawn, but I think it adds a little bit of interest and a bit of a pop of colour. And it's actually brilliant for pollinators. I've seen bumblebees, solitary bees, such as a personal favourite, the hairy-footed flower bee, and also loads of bee flies feeding on it. So it's a really important forage source for loads of our pollinators. Now, green alkanet is a bit of a thug in the garden and is considered a weed in most places, but it's actually a really important flower for pollinators. This big patch is potentially the busiest part of our garden when it comes to pollinators, and there's always something buzzing around. Now this leads on to our next tip, which is planting in big clumps and swathes. By doing this, it means pollinators have an easier job when feeding. They don't have to travel as far between flowers, and that means it uses up less of their energy, which is obviously quite helpful. Comfrey is a really useful plant for this technique. You only need to plant a few rhizomes and they'll produce huge plants with lots of flowers. Bees absolutely love it, and it's a really useful plant for gardeners, as you can use the leaves to make something called comfrey tea, which is a great fertiliser for vegetables and other places in your garden. It's also really important to focus on what we call successional planting, so making sure that there's something flowering in your garden all times of the year. Shady borders can also be really important for pollinators, and there's lots of different plant species that do really well in the shade. Pretty much most of our dead nettle species do well, and you can see here, got more of that ground ivy that has travelled all around the garden. Foxgloves, hedgerow cranesbills, there's loads of options, and one of my absolute favourites is another dead nettle, and is Lamia maculatum, or spotted dead nettle. It comes in lots of different horticultural varieties, so you can take your pick on the leaf colour and the flower colour, and it's a favourite of bumblebees. It's got really long flowers which fits the bumblebees' long tongues. Front gardens are quite an underutilised area for pollinators. This is ours, and we occasionally park our car here, but other than that we pretty much leave it, and it's turned into a brilliant flowering spot. We've got hawkbits, dandelions, we've got some yarrow coming up, and later in the year we'll have some self-heal. We cut this back every 2 years, so we'll do it this autumn and remove the cuttings, and hopefully next year we'll have even more flowering. We do keep some areas short in the garden. This is where we like to relax, under the apple tree. It's quite old, so it sheds quite a bit. It's more like a traditional lawn, although maybe a little bit longer, but it stays nice and lush and green all year round. Everywhere else we keep pretty long. This area we cut back once in the autumn every year. We remove the cuttings. That reduces the soil fertility and allows for some more interesting plant species to pop up. We've got our old friend the ground ivy here again, and we've got some clovers and some geranium species coming up as well. We have quite a bit of bare ground at the moment in the garden. Marshall, our dog, decimated some areas in our soggy winter we just had, and we just chucked down some wildflower seed in the spring. We've already got lots coming up. So again, some clovers and some trefoils, all members of the pea family. So the pea family is really great for bumblebees. It's a favourite of theirs. The really long flowers work well with their long tongues. Now this area is a little bit further along. We haven't cut this back for about 2 years. It's made some lovely, what we call tusky grassland habitat, which our carder bumblebees like to nest in. We've got some more bare ground. There was a planter here last year, and again we've just chucked down some wildflower seed, and there's quite a lot coming up. And then moving along again, this area we seeded with UK native seed mix about 2 years ago, and we've also added some additional meadow plug plants. So we've got some beautiful red campion flowering at the moment, and a bumblebee favourite, the bird's foot trefoil. Thanks for joining me on our little tour around my garden, and I hope you found it useful.